Okay, think about this. The U.S. Constitution, it's this foundational document, right? Centuries old.
Right, bedrock stuff.
And then you have AI, artificial intelligence. It's just exploding, changing everything.
Absolutely everything, it feels like sometimes.
So the place where those two meet, AI and the Constitution, it's not, science fiction anymore. It's happening now, and we really need to pay attention.
Couldn't agree more. AI isn't just theory now. It's actually getting woven into how government works. And that brings up some, well, pretty fundamental questions about sticking to constitutional principles in this new tech landscape.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today. We've been digging into this really insightful source, AI, governance, and constitutional integrity. It takes a hard look at the U.S. constitutional setup, the pressures it's already under, and then how AI kind of lands right in the middle of all that.
Yeah, it's a complex picture. So our mission today, for you listening, is really to pull out the key takeaways here. We want to understand how AI might actually help governments stick to the Constitution.
Right, the potential upside.
But, and this is crucial, we also need to really unpack the big risks involved. What could go wrong? And what kind of guardrails do we need?
Okay, let's start unpacking. The analysis kicks off by reminding us about separation of powers and judicial independence. These aren't just like academic terms. They were put there for a very specific reason.
Oh, absolutely vital. Dividing power between the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. That's the core defense against too much power in one place. Madison and Federalist Note 47 basically called concentrating that power the very definition of tyranny.
Wow. Strong words, still hit home today. And judicial independence, judges making decisions based on law, not politics or pressure. That's the other key piece.
The essential partner, yeah. But the analysis makes a really good point. These principles aren't guaranteed. They don't just run on autopilot. They're facing some serious modern pressures.
And it's interesting how some of these pressures are described as subtle, like not always a direct attack, but maybe more like a slow erosion.
Exactly. Sometimes it's democratic backsliding through perfectly legal means, or what the source calls executive aggrandizement.
Which means the executive branch sort of pushing its boundaries, maybe technically legal, but upsetting that intended balance.
That's the idea. The analysis points to things like the growing politicization around judges, how they're picked, how people react to rulings, and we're also seeing, more direct challenges to what courts say.
Like when the government seems to be testing how far it can go, maybe even hinting it might ignore a court order. That feels like a real friction point.
Those situations definitely signal tension. They raise serious questions about how the executive branch sees the court's role in the whole checks and balances system. It's where things can get pretty delicate.
And now add AI into that mix. It's not just another gadget. It really feels like it could fundamentally change how government operates.
No question.
Yeah.
The analysis frames it as a real double-edged sword. On one side, yeah, maybe AI brings more efficiency, maybe more transparency, even better oversight.
Okay, the pros.
But the cons are pretty hefty. We're talking about bias baked into algorithms, right? The fact that we often don't know how AI makes decisions, that whole black box thing.
Yeah, that worries me.
And then who's responsible when AI messes up? Plus, the really deep question, could AI start to edge out that essential human element in legal and ethical thinking?
So that's the core tension, isn't it? This tool, AI, promises objectivity, maybe helping us follow the rules better.
Right.
But could it end up undermining the very human way we've always interpreted the Constitution? That's a big one.
It really is. Huge implications.
Okay, let's zoom in on one of those pillars, judicial independence. The analysis breaks it down.
Yeah, it talks about judges being impartial towards the people in the case, party detachment. Then there's individual autonomy, meaning judges being free from pressure within the judiciary.
Like from other judges.
Yeah, though obviously limited by things like precedent and appeals courts. And then the big one, really, for the constitutional structure, political insularity, keeping judges free from White House or congressional control.
Got it. And the analysis says all these aspects, they've faced threats throughout history and they're still being tested now. You mentioned contemporary pressures. Could AI play a role there, making it worse, or maybe even helping?
That's definitely something we need to circle back to. But looking back helps. Think about Jefferson versus Marshall way back when, or Andrew Jackson reportedly ignoring the Supreme Court.
Right, historical flashpoints.
Even FDR trying to pack the court It failed, but it was a major challenge. These weren't just about who won a specific case. They were often about the fundamental power balance.
And thinking more recently, the source mentioned the Trump administration's public criticism of judges and times when it looked like court orders weren't being fully followed, like that initial halt on some deportations.
Exactly. Those examples are highlighted. And the public calls to impeach judges just because someone disagrees with the ruling that definitely feels like pressure. How might AI, say, analyzing public opinion, affect that?
Good question. Could it make it worse? Or maybe provide counter-arguments?
It's possible AI could do both, right? Amplify criticism by spreading it fast, or maybe provide objective analysis of the legal reasoning behind a decision to bolster its legitimacy. The analysis also mentions the whole fight over nationwide injunctions. That's become a real hot-button issue about how much power judges should have.
And we're seeing Congress try things too, right? Bills to limit what courts can rule on or take away judges' flexibility in sentencing.
Yep. Legislative pushback.
Plus all the money in state judicial elections that raises obvious conflict of interest questions. Even at the federal level, the president nominating and Senate confirming, it's inherently political.
It absolutely is. And the analysis notes even subtler things like potential influence through promotion chances or who controls the court budgets. Not salaries, those are protected, but other funding.
So with all these existing weak spots, how could introducing AI into, say, court procedures or legal research open up new ways for influence?
That's a really crucial question. What if the AI tools courts use have hidden biases? Or what if only some lawyers can afford the really sophisticated AI? Could that subtly tilt the scales?
Yeah, I see that.
The analysis really hammers home that judicial independence isn't automatic. It needs constant defense. But it also points to the defenses we do have.
Like the constitutional protections for federal judges' lifetime jobs, salaries can't be cut. Those seem pretty solid.
Foundational, absolutely. But it's not just the formal rules. Public support matters. The analysis mentions the huge protests in Israel in 2023 when people thought the government was trying to weaken the courts.
Right, external pressure for independence.
And even things within government, like the example from Brazil, where the Senate leader refused to impeach a justice just because the president asked. Checks can come from different places.
And groups like the American Bar Association speaking out against, improper impeachment threats based on rulings they don't like, saying, hey, the judiciary is an equal branch.
Exactly. And advocacy groups like the Brennan Center pushing for reforms, especially in states, to get partisan politics out of judicial elections, strengthen rules about when judges have to step aside. It's a fight on many fronts.
So this brings us back to AI. The analysis kind of sets the table here, doesn't it? It makes you think about how AI might interact with all this. Could it help protect independence or create new vulnerabilities?
Precisely. We'll get more into the AI specifics later, but first let's look at the separation of powers itself. It's not just about having three separate boxes, is it? It's how they interact.
Totally. The Constitution doesn't just divide power, it makes the branches bump up against each other, checks and balances. Justice Brandeis said it wasn't built for speed, right? It was built to stop tyranny through that inevitable friction.
I love that phrase. And you see it everywhere. Congress makes laws, president can veto.
But Congress can override.
And the courts can say the law itself is unconstitutional. It's this constant push and pull.
President appoints officials. Senate has to agree. Courts review executive orders. Congress holds the purse strings, can impeach officials. President commands the military, but Congress declares war. It's complex.
A very intricate design. And just like judicial independence, this balance gets tested constantly. You mentioned the early cases, Marbury v. Madison, Jackson, FDR. Those tensions are always there.
But the analysis points to more recent friction, too, especially between the White House and the courts.
Yeah, the Trump administration's clashes with the judiciary over rulings, sometimes seeming hesitant to comply fully. But the source really digs into one specific case involving the Alien Enemies Act.
Oh, right. The attempt to use that old law for mass deportations of Venezuelans, arguing that this gang, Tren de Aragua, was like an invasion. That felt like a stretch.
Well, the federal courts largely thought so, too. They basically said, look, there's no declared war, which the AEA requires, and this gang isn't a foreign nation or government invading.
So the courts pushed back, judiciary checking the executive.
Clearly. And a key legal fight within those cases was about how much deference, how much weight courts should give the executive branch when it makes factual determinations, like saying, yes, this is an invasion.
So if AI was feeding the executive branch data saying invasion risk is high, how would that affect that deference calculation?
That's a fascinating question for the AI age. Traditionally, courts defer because the executive branch has national security expertise, classified info. Right.
Makes sense.
But others worry about giving the executive a blank check. They argue courts can handle sensitive info. Look at the FISA court. And when people's rights are on the line, you need serious scrutiny.
So that Alien Enemies Act case really shows the courts wrestling with how much to trust the executive's word, especially on national security stuff.
Exactly. It highlights that ongoing tension. And that history is really important as we start thinking about how AI might change or maybe even intensify that dynamic.
Okay, let's pivot now. Let's talk about the upside. Could AI actually help constitutional governance? The analysis brings up constitutional AI, or CAI. Sounds intriguing. What's the basic idea?
It's essentially trying to build AI systems that operate according to a set of preloaded principles, a kind of constitution for the AI itself.
So you give the AI rules based on ethics, maybe even human rights documents.
Sort of. The source explains it as going from general rules to more specific instructions down to principles the AI can actually follow. The goal is to make its guiding values clear and aligned with ours. Anthropic, the company mentioned, even has constitutional classifiers to try and block bad outputs or attempts to misuse the AI.
Interesting. Trying to build in safeguards from the start.
Right. And it's not just companies. The government's thinking about this too. The White House put out that blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights. It's not law, but it lays out key ideas.
Like what?
Things like AI systems needing to be safe and effective, protecting against algorithmic discrimination, data privacy, people getting notice and explanations when AI affects them, and crucially, having human alternatives available.
Okay, that seems pretty important, especially if AI is making decisions about people's rights or services.
Absolutely.
Huh?
Which leads to how AI might actively help ensure government follows the Constitution. Think about using AI to analyze laws or executive orders.
How would that work?
Well, generative AI could potentially read through tons of legal text, summarize it, spot potential problems, maybe flag discriminatory language, or sections that might mess with the separation of powers. Could it assess a bill's weaponization potential or an order's risk of overreach?
Wow, like a super-powered legal assistant.
Pretty much. Imagine it helping government lawyers or congressional staff quickly grasp arguments, draft memos, even research really specific historical questions about what the Constitution originally meant.
Okay, that's analysis. What about looking for patterns in what the government does?
Huge potential there, too. Could AI analyze records of executive orders, regulations, how laws are enforced, where money goes, looking for shifts away from constitutional norms or laws that humans might miss?
Like spotting if enforcement seems biased against one group, or if an agency is consistently pushing the limits of its authority?
Exactly. The analysis even mentions this theory of administrative evil, the idea that bureaucracies can sometimes do harmful things almost unconsciously. Could AI be trained to spot those patterns, that masking of unethical actions? We already know algorithms can lead to bad outcomes, like biased bail or hiring. Maybe AI could help police that.
And then there's transparency, making government less opaque.
Yeah, could AI help process government data dumps and make them actually understandable for the public or oversight bodies? The AI Bill of Rights hits on this need for transparency when the government uses AI.
But wait, isn't AI itself often a black box? How does that fit?
That's the challenge. But there's a whole field of explainable AI or XAI, trying to make these systems less mysterious. If that progresses, AI could genuinely improve transparency, both for the public and inside government.
Okay, so summing up the potential pluses. Big efficiency gains in legal work.
Definitely. Automating research, analysis, freeing up humans for harder tasks. Especially helpful where resources are tight, like in some courts or agencies.
Systematically spotting problems or non-compliance maybe earlier than humans would?
Proactive oversight, yeah. Auditing programs for fairness, consistency, bias, both human and algorithmic bias.
And maybe more objectivity. Applying rules consistently, though you flagged this one.
Right, that's the dream, but it comes with massive caveats. AI isn't objective out of the box. It learns from data. If the data is biased, the AI will be biased, often worse.
Like those examples you mentioned, the Compass tool showing racial bias and predicting reoffending, or Amazon's hiring tool discriminating against women.
Exactly. And the fact that the AI field itself isn't very diverse, that plays a role too. So yes, potential for objectivity, but it's a really thorny problem to actually achieve.
Which perfectly tees up the other side. the big limitations and risks. The analysis warns about maybe focusing too much on measurable stuff, the procedures, and losing sight of the actual values and substance of constitutional rights. That feels important.
Hugely important. Rights aren't just items on a checklist. They involve deep values. And the first major risk is that algorithmic bias we just touched on. It's not theoretical.
It happens.
It happens. AI learns our history, biases, and all. Those Compass and Amazon examples show how easily AI can just bake in and even amplify existing unfairness. The lack of diversity in who builds AI just makes it worse.
Okay. Bias is risk number one. What else? The black box.
The black box, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you don't know why an AI made a decision that affects your rights, say, denied benefits flagged you as a risk, how can you argue against it? It hits core due process ideas. You have a right to understand and contest deficiencies.
Undermines trust, too.
Completely. And while explainable AI is trying to help, we're not fully there yet.
Then there's just what AI can't do, right? The human stuff.
Exactly. The analysis stresses this. AI can't replicate human moral reasoning, ethical judgment, or understanding the political context in complex constitutional cases. Interpreting the Constitution is often about values, about understanding society things AI just doesn't get.
It doesn't have empathy or consciousness.
Right. AI doesn't eliminate judgment, it just moves it. Humans still choose the data, write the prompts, interpret the output, and hidden values can creep in through the AI itself. There's even this thing called AI sycophancy, where the AI might just tell you what it thinks you want to hear, which isn't great for objective legal analysis.
Okay, other risks. Privacy.
Big one. These systems chew through massive amounts of data, often sensitive personal or legal info. Think about the risk of breaches, misuse.
Yeah.
The AI Bill of Rights calls out privacy, and there's pressure for better data privacy laws generally. Plus, the AI systems themselves can be hacked.
And what happens when AI gets it wrong? Who's on the hook?
That's a huge, mostly unanswered question.
Right.
If AI gives bad legal advice, or misreads a law, or helps violate someone's rights, who's legally responsible?
The programmer, the user, the government agency.
Our current laws, negligence, product liability don't fit AI perfectly. Is software even a product? The EU's trying to tackle this with their AI Act, but it's tricky. Most people think humans need to stay accountable, but drawing those lines with AI involved is tough.
And finally, just the difficulty of teaching AI the Constitution itself.
Yeah, the analysis makes this point beautifully. The Constitution isn't code. It's, as they say, a Delphic and ancient text full of gray areas.
It requires interpretation.
Deep interpretation. How do you program AI to do something like originalism, understanding historical context, subtle language shifts? AI struggles with old ways of speaking, and historians don't even agree on everything.
Plus, human judgment is baked into choosing what historical data the AI learns from.
Exactly. And the Constitution evolves through court decisions, changing society, and AI trained only on the past might be stuck there, reflecting outdated or rejected views. So, yeah, huge potential, but also really significant inherent limits and risks. It's a very mixed bag.
It really is. So given all that, how do we move forward? The analysis argues for being proactive, strong governance, keeping humans in the loop, and innovating responsibly.
Right. And robust AI governance here means more than just general ethics talk. It needs rules specifically about AI's impact on rights and legal processes.
Like what kind of rules?
Clear guidelines for government use. Transparency, people need to know when they're dealing with AI and how it works. Ways for the public to weigh in and oversee things. The analysis suggests things like government AI councils, task forces, maybe even chief AI officers.
And actual regulations.
Probably. Things like mandatory bias audits, requirements for explainability, strong data privacy rules. The EU's AI Act, with its risk-based approach, is one model. The big challenge is finding that sweet spot, encouraging innovation without trampling on democracy and the Constitution. It'll likely need ongoing input from everyone: tech, law, government, public.
And you mentioned keeping humans in the loop. That seems absolutely critical.
Non-negotiable, really.
Yeah.
AI should be a tool for human lawyers and judges, not a replacement, especially in constitutional law, which is so full of values.
That human alternatives, consideration, and fallback idea from the AI Bill of Rights.
Exactly. People affected by AI decisions need a way to get human review, maybe even opt out sometimes. And lawyers, judges, everyone in the legal field needs to get AI literate. Understand what it can do, what it can't do, where the biases creep in, the ethical traps.
Like Judge Bush said, judicial power belongs to people, not tech. Humans have the final say.
That's the principle. So how do we innovate responsibly? The analysis suggests a few things. More collaboration lawyers, tech folks, ethicists talking to each other. More research into AI that's fair and understandable. Clear standards for the data used to train AI.
Makes sense. Good data in, hopefully better results out.
Right. Robust testing and auditing before deploying AI in government. Working with other countries. And maybe starting small pilot projects, gradual adoption, learn as we go.
A cautious approach.
Definitely. And the analysis makes a final, really thought-provoking point. Just grappling with how to govern AI for constitutional purposes forces us to think harder about what those constitutional principles mean today.
How so?
Well, when you ask, what does due process look like with an algorithm? Or how does equal protection apply to AI bias? You can't answer those without really digging into the core meaning of due process and equal protection in the 21st century.
So the process of applying these old principles to new tech actually makes us clarify the principles themselves.
Exactly. It compels a re-examination.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot to take in. A really complex picture we've painted here. You've got this potential for AI to make constitutional government maybe more efficient, better overseen.
The potential upside, yes.
But then these huge, very real risks to basic rights, to the rule of law itself.
It really underscores that bringing AI into government isn't just a tech upgrade. It's fundamentally a values challenge, a normative challenge. We need constant conversation to make sure innovation doesn't run roughshod over the Constitution.
And through it all, those core principles, judicial independence, separation of powers, checks and balances, due process, equal protection, they have to be the non-negotiables, right? The anchors.
Absolutely. AI needs to support human judgment, ethical thinking, and democratic accountability. Can't replace them.
So here's something for you, the listener, to chew on. Which specific constitutional principles do you think are most likely to be tested or even reshaped as AI becomes more embedded in government? And maybe more importantly, what role do we as citizens have in making sure these changes actually strengthen, not weaken, our fundamental rights?
It feels like a conversation that's really just getting started.
And one where everyone's perspective is needed.
This is DigitView.